Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the RepPath Leadership Series. Today we have a special guest and we're going in a slightly different route today from typically going with medical sales leadership from different VPs and managers out there, which we would typically do on our Wednesday call. We have a special guest who is a licensed mental health counselor. So full disclaimer, she's my sister-in-law. So if there's any animosity on the call, you guys know why. But before I introduce her, just want to give some quick housekeeping. As always, guys, we are live today on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. We're on every possible podcast platform out there. And if anybody wants the recording to this episode and any other episodes, please make sure you're subscribing to my YouTube channel, which is Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching. You can see James put it up on the screen for you guys to click and subscribe. It's free, so please make sure you do that. And other than that, we're just going to dive right in. And I wanted to welcome Alana Carvalho to the show today. Today, we're going to be talking about shedding the past, that past luggage you have from previous jobs and being able to shed that to be successful in your role, in your current role. So Alana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Joe. As he mentioned, I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I specialize in working on relationships, as well as codependency, perfectionism. As a result of perfectionism, I work a lot with workaholics and things of that sort. So I'm excited to be talking about this topic today.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Really do. Thank you for joining us today because this is a different take. And even though it's a different take and we're not focusing directly on medical sales today, I think it's very important because all of us has been in this situation. Let's be real. We all didn't leave every job in the greatest situation known to man where everything was so perfect. I mean, odds are if it was so perfect, we would still be there. Mm-hmm. So we're going to focus this talk, obviously, on, shedding that negative energy and negative experiences so you don't take it into this current role and have it affect you.
Sure.
So just to dive right in, Alana, what's your opinion? Can you explain why shedding the past is such an important step for your new sales role?
For sure. A friend once said to me, people don't leave their jobs, they leave their bosses. And I think that's a really important point because a lot of times we leave jobs because of, relational discord that's happening in the workplace, not feeling appreciated or not feeling recognized for what we're doing. And I think a lot of times that negativity can really kind of come with us into the next place that we go, where we go in and we kind of feel a little bit like, scared. Is this person going to treat me the way I was treated in the past, right? Am I going to have a similar experience that I've had before? And then, unfortunately, what tends to happen as a result of that is that we tend to play into that in interesting ways, right? It's kind of like the self-fulfilling thing where, perhaps we had a difficult time with a boss. And so then we maintain a little bit more distance from our new boss. And what ends up happening is that we then maybe don't create the relationship with them that actually would benefit us from creating, right? We do these things without even realizing it.
Sure. And would this be considered a form of PTSD?
Well, I think on like a low scale, yeah. Like
our
experiences do stick with us and we do like fear recreating them. And as humans, we are likely to recreate these experiences. So we have to really be mindful, even if, it wasn't our fault what happened, how we were treated, about how we might play into a similar dynamic in the future, right? As a boss, and as someone who's had many bosses, like, I know what that feels like to, be in a situation where you have your old stuff with you and you're a little like, ooh, like, is this going to happen again here? Like, what is this person like? And we're trying to kind of feel it out. And I know on the boss end of it, I can feel often from my employees when somebody is like really hesitant to like start a relationship. Like I can feel that, something is coming up there. that most often is from like a past negative experience that they don't want to happen again. But it's tough as the boss because, of course, no one wants to feel like they're being put into kind of like a role that perhaps they didn't, create for that person. They want to make sure that they're forming a healthy relationship with that person. And it can be difficult to do that when there's baggage involved, right?
Well, is there anything that you do as a boss that well, I guess let me back up. Are there any signs that like you start to recognize that person, I guess, closed off a little bit? And is there anything that you do as a boss proactively to make them feel comfortable?
With my staff, I really try to encourage them, reach out as much as possible, ask as many questions, tell me if you're having difficulty with any feedback. Like the more I get, the better, because then I can understand what's transpiring. I'm in the mental health field though, so we're used to kind of talking about that stuff, right? In the medical sales field, I imagine that's not something that perhaps is as encouraged, but it is something to think about of like, what does my boss want from me? Like, do they want me to be reaching out and asking a lot of questions? Or are they someone who prefers to have their staff like learn in different ways from peers, from, the handbook, from whatever the thing is, right? So I would encourage people who are going into a new position to try to understand what your boss's style is, because I think that will help you understand how to navigate that relationship without making assumptions from previous relationships, right? Because if we don't have information as humans, we tend to create stories, right? Like we create a story about what something means. So we're likely to assume that one behavior means a certain thing, and we're more likely to do that based on our past experiences, right? So instead of just doing that all in our head, it's very important to get into the habit of having more communication with people so that we can understand what it is that they're looking for, and also sharing with them perhaps what we're looking for.
Sure. And what would be some of those common roadblocks that employees carry from one job to the next?
Well, I've had people say things like, if I reach out to them and I say, hey, I haven't heard from you, like, what's going on? They'll say something like, oh, I didn't even know you wanted to hear from me. Like I think when they've had an experience with, an employer where they feel like they shouldn't speak up, or their employer isn't encouraging feedback or, questioning or all of that stuff, they just tend to assume that that's what they need to do. They kind of like need to do it all themselves, right? And I don't think that that's a great way to go about it, because we don't tend to end up doing the job properly that way, So What I find is that people then start to make mistakes, right? And so then I'm kind of like, whoa, why is so-and-so making mistakes? And often I find out it's because they're too scared to ask a question. They're too like concerned about like looking stupid, or, not feeling confident enough, or whatever the issue might be. And I always encourage people to try to push past that, to figure out what are the norms within that particular company. Of course, there are companies that they don't want you asking the questions, but then you got to figure out, maybe there's a peer that you connect with, or there has to be some way that you can find the information that you need and a way to acclimate properly to the company.
And would you think would you appreciate it? And I know you can't speak for every manager out there, but if an employee came up to you right when they're hired, and it's part of their onboarding or whatever the initial stage, to sit down and have that conversation and say, I'm the employee, and saying, hey, Alana, in my previous role, I had some challenges with management, like I want to lay out some of the expectations, or be more open at the beginning, and be open about some of those previous, you got the job now. Right. So it's not like you have to pretend you're this perfect person in the interview process. Right. They obviously like you enough to give you the job. Right. Like to be more upfront at the beginning, so that you can make the manager aware of some of the things that honestly he or she might not know about, that they might do some of those things that it didn't work well in the past for you. Or is it kind of let's see what happens first, kind of sit back and see if there's challenges as opposed to addressing it at the beginning?
I think that it's always best to have more communication. I agree with you that once you have the job, like you're in, right? So like, let's try to make this the best relationship possible. And then you see how the person reacts. Like I wouldn't necessarily go in and throw out all the dirty laundry, but I think I would test the waters, right? And say, I'm wondering, what your style is with this, or how you prefer this to look. Like if I have a question, do you want me to ask you first, or would you prefer that I came up with some solution and then came to you with that, right? Like, asking those questions to get some feedback is so important, right? Because some bosses are going to say things like, of course, I want you to ask me right away. And other bosses are going to say things like, I really prefer that you figure that out independently, and then you come to me if there's a problem or something, right? So everybody's so different, and we need to understand each other's styles and what people are bringing to the plate.
Right. And what would be some of those signs that you can tell? I know you touched on this a little bit before, that someone is holding on to some old workplace baggage.
So most often I find when I don't hear from them that there's something going on where they're kind of like hiding and feeling like they need to do everything themselves, by themselves, so that's when I usually find like, okay, something is, they have the impression from somewhere that they're not supposed to reach out. They're, and part of it can be a personality thing too. Some of us are more quiet or withdrawn, and we're not, we don't know how to assert ourselves, and that's okay, right? But a lot of times it's from previous experiences where perhaps we've been given, really negative feedback about, the way that we're doing something, and then we take that in so much that we have a hard time moving past that somewhere else that might be such a different experience.
Right. And I mean, that makes sense how you're dealing with that with your manager. How do you think that affects their performance in the relationship, say with clients?
It can't not have an impact, because when we're feeling like we can't go to our bosses for support, and ask questions and get what we need, inevitably we're going to kind of hold a lot of stuff in, and then we're not going to be able to perform at our best. We're just not, right? We do better as humans when we have support around us, when we feel good about our relationships. Like that is a huge motivator, and it helps us feel more confident, right? And those are two things that we want to feel when we're going into working with clients, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think that, I'm trying to think, because I'm trying to relate this, even though it's not a medical sales talk, because the only reason that is a little unique in this space is that reps are alone in the car a lot.
Sure.
Right. So it's not like, when you're in the office space, you're walking by people. I mean, if something is wrong with me and you're working with me side by side for 8-10 hours a day, you're going to be like, Joe, what's up? Right. Something's up with you. Mm-hmm. I guess, one of the things you noticed, because I'm thinking of for myself as a sales leader, how would I notice this if someone's in the car all day long and I'm not with them? Mm-hmm. So is there anything, I know it's, you mentioned them not being, being quiet or not being in touch with you. How would I navigate that? Because I know it's a little bit more challenging if they're in the car all day long and I'm not with them and not in front of them. I'm sorry.
So you know a little bit about my brief stint with marketing in the medical sales world. Yeah. So I have some experience around this. I know what it's like. I would say that, as a rep, and being alone all day, people don't know what you're doing, right? So you want to really show in some capacity what your value is to this company by showing the amount of work you're doing in some capacity, right? So I know when I had my stint in medical marketing, I used to keep really detailed notes for my employer so they knew what was happening. It's very similar in my field as well, in the mental health field, where it's we can see based on what's kind of transpiring in sessions and things like that, what's going on in the work, right? And you want to, I believe that you want to be showing people like you're doing the work, right? So however that looks, whether there's some way of like, giving updates or checking in or whatever is the system of that place, I would use that to show that you're putting a lot of effort into what you're doing. Because if not, remember, people make assumptions when they don't know, right? So if you're by yourself all day and they don't know what you're doing, and there's only a few ways to figure that out. One, of course, is like the results of what you're bringing to the table, but there's other ways to do that as well, right?
Yeah. Well, that really hit close to home, because a lot of sales reps, they're terrible at keeping call notes. They're terrible. I mean, to be fair, I was terrible at it too. I would be in my car, you're pulling out your laptop, you got to go to 12, 15 more offices. It's raining out. There's traffic. Right. I'm going to enter this in real quick because I got so much shit to do. I want to move on. But at the end of the day, when they're, like you said, they're going to assume the worst if they don't hear from you, if they don't see the call notes. They don't know, I just had an amazing call with Dr. Jones. You didn't put that in there. They think you just popped in, dropped off some promotional material and left.
Right.
So that's something that definitely hits close to home for a lot of sales reps out there that are listening. But I guess if you've been in this experience, if you've had these negative experiences, how can you reframe that to turn these into growth opportunities?
Yeah, I think you have to remember that not all managers are negative, are out to get you. Like, there are actually people that want to see you grow and thrive and are there to help you with that process. So I would just be mindful of making assumptions that, all bosses are terrible, or all bosses, just want to, get to the bottom line. Yeah, there's truth to that, but at the same time, some of our experiences can be so like helpful in terms of our growth,
right?
And we all need that, right? Like, some of my difficult work experiences were the best experiences for me growth wise. I learned so much about how certain systems worked and how to navigate difficult relationships and all of these things that you don't get that opportunity if everything's just like, rosy and what's going on. But at the same time, it's being mindful of like what's actually transpiring in front of you, versus, assuming that this is going to be just like every other position that I've had, right? It's like, how am I going to make this different?
Well, it's similar. It would be similar to relationships,
right?
It's the same thing. You've been dating for a while. You have the past 5 people you dated. It's been a nightmare.
Right.
It is kind of hard to go in, especially when you see like one little sign that was similar to someone in the past. You're like, oh, here we go. Right. This is another so-and-so, so would it be smart to truly go in there with a clean slate every time and just not have so many, false judgments or I'm drawing a blank on the word, but basically go in there with any negative premonitions or anything like that.
Right. Yes, to some extent, but that said, like, I often work with people who have had difficult work experiences, right? And I think one of the things that we can do as humans is kind of write off the whole experience as bad instead of taking the parts that were actually really helpful potentially in helping us see ourselves. Like, for example, even if we had some really bad bosses, right? If we've gotten the same feedback 3 times in a row, that's still really important feedback, right? Like, if someone says, even if, like I said, you had terrible experience, but this is now the 3rd time you've heard, you tend to be really quiet in meetings. And so we feel like you don't show that you're confident or something like that, right? It's like, okay, even if that was bad, that's really important feedback, right? And I need to take that in.
Sure.
Like an old coworker of mine once said, like, if one person tells you you have a tail, you can keep walking. But if 2 people tell you have a tail, you have to turn around and look.
Right.
And I think that's important in terms of like, yeah, like once we start to get certain feedback from more than one person, like try to take that in and see how, not that you're creating a certain, experience, but how you're contributing to it in some way, right? Like if you're always the person who's overlooked for a promotion, what's happening there? Like, what are you giving off that perhaps is making people not feel like you're the right person for that next level, job, right? Like those are important things for you to look at despite having difficult experiences in the past.
And do you think that, because I've done this myself, where I'm not achieving the goals that I want to have, I start blaming other
Mm,
people. I start blaming outside things. I mean, sales reps do this all the time. It's a bad month. Oh, this happens all the time in the summer and
mm,
around Christmas time.
right.
Around Christmas time, you'll hear, well, a lot of the doctors are away. They're not doing as many procedures because it's the holidays.
Mhm.
It's summertime. It's August. Everyone goes away in August. The numbers are going to dip. In reality, there's sometimes when that's true, and then when you're just making excuses. So
Right.
it sounds like you're saying, you got to put ownership on yourself to fix some of these things if people continuously tell you to do that.
For sure. I mean, one of the, medical sales probably is similar. We often look at client retention as a way to show how effective someone is being in the therapy space, right? So, for medical sales, what would that be? Like how many, sales you're making or something of that sort?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing, they're going to look at your numbers.
Right,
Your
exactly.
numbers are everything, but say in a realistic situation where you're launching a product,
Right.
it's going to take time to
Sure.
grow that. So if
Right.
it takes sometimes 6-9 months, a year, so you don't have the numbers, they're going to go back to, like we were talking about before, looking at your call frequency,
Right.
checking your call notes, like all these things you're in control of, so
Mm-hmm.
they can easily
Absolutely.
do that. But Gad, I'm sorry.
Right. No, and I'm just saying, like, because similar to like, your boss isn't necessarily going to be in all your meetings with your doctors and whoever. I can't be in the sessions with my therapist that I hire, right?
Right.
And so we have to go by things like, numbers and retention and all of that kind of stuff. It helps us understand what's happening, where the disconnect is, right? Um, and if in these types of positions, there's always going to be a natural ebb and flow, right? Like you're not always going to be on this sort of trajectory where things are always going up, right? Like things usually, it's like you get some clients, you lose some clients, like that happens, right? But at some point, it should be steadily increasing, even though there will be dips in it, right?
Sure.
Like somebody who's building a practice shouldn't suddenly have 0 clients like 2 years into it, right? They might lose like 2 clients or a few, but
Yeah.
they're generally going to be okay, right? So
Right.
you guys probably have like a similar thing in whatever the format is, right? Oftentimes therapists will say things like, oh, well, like just like you said, oh, it's summer, oh, it's the holidays, there's always, oh, that's why I lost like this group of people. And I always say to them, what was the feedback? What did they tell you is the reason they're leaving, right? And if the therapist isn't asking that question, that to me off the bat feels problematic, right? But oftentimes we get some generic answer like too expensive, like I my finances change. Like that's the most common generic answer when someone doesn't want to tell us what's like really happening. Not that that's not true, but there's other reasons too.
It's usually an objection or just a
Right.
smoke screen.
Right, exactly. And when I hear that a therapist isn't taking in the feedback, that feels like a red flag to me, right? Of like, you can't just always make an excuse of why things aren't working out, right? There has to be like real self-reflection and looking at like, how am I contributing to this dynamic not being, the one that is lasting for this person, right?
Sure.
And it's not to say like, my statement before, it's like, it's not any one piece. It's when you get the 2, the 3, the 4, like it's the groupings of the feedback that you want to really take in and go, that's why, right? So I don't know exactly how to translate that in your guys field, but I would still say like the more feedback that you can get anywhere in life, the better, because then you know what you need to work on, right? Like don't shy away from that type of feedback.
And that's a great point, because what about if new reps start at a new company? Because I know a lot of reps it's always hard for them to ask the doctor after a couple months, how am I doing?
Right.
Just forget about the product today, doc.
Mm-hmm.
How am I doing? Am I providing the service?
Yes.
And even have like, say, create an evaluation sheet that they could create themselves. This is something I'm doing, Bob, the manager. I just want my doctors to fill out an evaluation because it helps me get better.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that would work? Because it's also something else that they can prove to give to their boss, besides just the call notes.
I absolutely love that. I love getting feedback in that way, because again, like most often someone is going to say something that surprises you that you didn't realize. Okay. Right. Because we have a hard time seeing ourselves. Right. So someone's going to say something and you're going to go, really? Like, that's what I do. And that tells you like you're on the right track, because you just found out something about yourself that you didn't know that's impacting your relationships, right? Sure. So if you get feedback from a doctor and they say, I really don't like how John doesn't pay attention to like my schedule or something, and you thought you were being so thoughtful to the schedule, right? So you're like, oh my God, there's some disconnect that's happening here, where he's feeling this way and I'm feeling this way about it. So we're not aligned. What am I doing to contribute to that? Yeah. Right? Like that is great feedback.
Yeah. And what is, so what would be some tools or strategies or techniques, like, or other things that they can do, again, when they're coming in with that baggage, to make sure it doesn't happen again, or to work on that so they don't just let it build up again?
I think it's exactly what you kind of just said, which is like asking the right questions, right? Like if you're concerned about a specific thing, ask the question about it, right? We have to be so mindful about shying away from what we actually want to know and talk about, right? Like we tend to do like the opposite, where we're like, oh, I'm worried about this, so I'm going to not say anything about it. It's like, no, it should be the opposite. If I'm worried about it, like, let's talk about it, right? Like that's what we need to do. We need to be like, hey, I've been told in the past that sometimes, I can be way too straightforward about this. Like, how are you feeling about how I'm talking about this? Do you have questions? That type of thing, just to like soften it and bring awareness to it, right?
Sure. I mean, and I think most people, because one of the things that I shied away from, and I still don't like, I'm not like loving when I see myself on camera, but that was one of the big things. And when you record yourself, especially, you can't go into a doctor's office and sit there with your phone and hold it up and, do a selfie with the doctor and record the conversation. But even when you get that feedback, to do like, say, a role play with your boss and record it.
Yes.
And to see yourself. Right. And you're like, wow, I can't believe I say that so often. Or my hand gestures, I'm constantly doing this, or I'm looking up, or making weird gestures. I could see that being something. I'm just thinking out loud here on what reps could do that forces them to don't shy away from the negative. Don't shy away from really the truth.
Right.
Confront it. You don't like when people say things sometimes. That's life. But if you don't fix it, it's never going to work out.
Yeah, for sure. When I used to run a substance abuse treatment facility. And when I was there, I moved from being a counselor to being a manager. And I had never been a manager before, right? So one of the things that they did, this was at the YMCA, and they had a good way of like helping people learn how to become managers. One of the things that I had to do was I had to give a survey to every single person in my office about how I was doing. Now, I had just taken on the job, so I was like, oh my God, this is so like vulnerable. I'm asking everyone to give me feedback on something that I actually don't know how to do well, right? So I knew it was going to be bad, right? And it was like the best feedback, so difficult, so hard to receive, but the best because I knew what I needed to work on, right? Like, we don't like to know what we need to work on. That's a problem, right? Like, we want to shy away from getting difficult feedback because it's uncomfortable. And it's like, well, guys, listen, if you want to grow, you're going to have to be uncomfortable, right? Like, that is the reality. So I would rather that you felt uncomfortable, got really good feedback, and then learned how to change and like do your job better, then you sat in a comfortable place and never grew, right? Like, if that's what you want, that's fine. You will not be able to, in my opinion, grow to where you probably want to be at in, your future, right? Like, now I run another practice, and it's like, if I didn't have that previous feedback, I don't know how I would be doing this, right? I would have so many blind spots, so many things that I didn't know about myself, because I can't know those things, right?
Well, I love what you said about being uncomfortable. Essentially, it's being comfortable getting uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a dork when it comes to like National Geographic shows. They had the show on a lobster. I don't know if you ever seen this on how a lobster grows.
No.
This is pretty dorky, and James is going to make fun of me during the show or after the show. He's definitely laughing right now.
I'm actually very fascinated by that stuff, so no, I'm not going to make fun of you.
Okay. So what a lobster does, it keeps growing out of that shell that it's currently in until it's uncomfortable and it's too big for the shell. It then sheds that shell because it's uncomfortable. It doesn't fit. And then grows, it hides and then grows a bigger shell. Mm-hmm. And then it keeps growing. It gets uncomfortable, sheds that shell, and then hides, grows a bigger shell. That's why older lobsters, you see them, they're bigger and bigger and bigger. There's not like a 6-month lobster that's 10 pounds.
Right.
So it's the same thing the only way to grow is to be uncomfortable, just like a lobster does.
Right. Absolutely. That's a great analogy. I love that. Yeah, that's it, guys. Like, you have to, if you want to grow, you got to get uncomfortable. You got to get feedback. You need to know yourself better. Don't assume because you tend to be, perhaps a more self-aware person that you just know what your shortcomings are. People don't. You really need the feedback.
Right. And again, I'm not going to give any more dorky National Geographic references, but we're getting at about the halfway point. I want to pause and turn it over to James and the audience and see if there's any questions for us, James.
Yeah, there's a few questions we got for you.
Beautiful.
Let's see what we got. They're looking pretty mostly in the med sales device because that's who's listening to the show. But how do you stay motivated when your territory feels tapped out?
Is for you to address first, Alana, and take a stab at it, or no?
Well, although I can't speak directly to the medical sales piece of it, I would say it's kind of like anything else in life where I think that when we're feeling defeated, we're going to be defeated. You know what I mean? So if we're feeling like I'm not going to be able to do this area is too saturated, I would imagine that the mindset then informs our behaviors. Like, we go in with like a little less excitement, a little less motivation, not feeling so confident. So I would just be mindful about that feeling. That's true in so many areas. Like, some people will say, like, why should I become a speaker? There's so many speakers, like the field is saturated. And it's like, yeah, and you can bring your own flavor to it. And that might be the one they're looking for, right? Like, you will find the right audience for the thing that you are trying to, market or sell.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I challenge anyone. I've never seen a territory that had 100% market share. So you might feel that it's tapped out, but trust me, there's always areas to grow. You might have a doctor that he uses, every rep says this, he's using me all the time, Is he really? You know, you might use you 80% of the time, and it feels like he's using you all the time, but you still have that extra 20% where you can grow. So you shouldn't, no one should feel that they have a territory that's tapped out, because I've never met a rep that has 100% market share. It's impossible. So just my advice would be just keep searching for more business out there, because again, it's not as tapped out as your mind is telling you that it's tapped out.
We have. I overthink a lot. How do I let not one bad call or a tough day spiral?
Well, the reality is we're all going to have tough calls, bad calls all the time. You know, like that is the reality to all of the work that we do. There's times I'm with a client, I'm like, that wasn't the thing I wanted to say, you know, like it happens. We have to be mindful about that perfectionistic thinking of like, it needs to be right 100% of the time. It's like, no, we're going to have bad days. We're going to have bad times with clients. You know, all of that stuff is going to happen. And our job is to learn from it and figure out how we can improve the next time, right? That doesn't mean, again, that we're going to do it 100% the next time. It means that we're going to keep growing and learning, right? And that's what working on perfectionism is about, is that we don't hold ourselves to these standards that one bad call means, you know, I suck at what I'm doing and I should get out of the field. It's like one bad call is just that. It's one bad call, and then we have to keep it moving.
Well, because you're bringing up perfectionism, and not to dive in here, but should we strive for perfectionism?
No.
Don't strive.
It's like it actually.
My mentality. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like strive for the 100. Strive for a perfect score, and if you fall short, then that's okay, because it's still a win. Or you're saying no, don't even get perfectionism out of your head, because I don't want to steal your answer, but please tell me what you were going to say.
Yeah, I think that perfectionism is like it's the killer of like our motivation, our confidence. Like people think that you need to have your, you know, expectations, desires up at like 100 to be good at what you're doing, or to like get a lot done. But that's actually not the case. Like when we tend to lower the bar for ourselves, we actually tend to do better, because we don't feel so much pressure. Right? It's like we put too much pressure on ourselves. Like, you know, I always tell the story about how, because I was very focused in school on like getting straight A's. That was like very important to me, right? And one day I was sitting in graduate school, and I tell this story because it occurred to me that I was there to learn and not just get A's. And that was like a novel learning experience, because I was like, oh, school is about learning. Oh my God, right? Like I thought it was just about achieving and getting the A and moving on. And that changed like my whole relationship to it at that point, right? And I think it can be similar even when there are things that we're striving for. Like just because you take down the perfectionism doesn't mean you stop striving, right? Like I'm just as motivated as I was before, but I'm just enjoying what I do more. Right? Because it's not so heavy. It's lighter. It's more enjoyable. Right.
And would you, I mean, I totally agree. Would you say for that rep that's having not achieving perfectionism, having that bad day, is there a good like note taking that you should take, like okay, this wasn't a good day because of X, Y, and Z. So this is something like I want to work on or try to fix, and actually write down what was wrong? Or is it okay just to say, okay, make a mental note, I'm not going to do that approach that time with the doctor, I'm going to fix that?
I think either of those are great. Like I love when people journal about things. It depends on really like the way that you process, right? Like some people are like need to write down, and that helps them remember and process. And other people, they're kind of like, got it, right? Like I see what happened, I have internalized it, and next time I'm going to do it differently. And it's like, great, you know?
Right. Okay. Perfect.
And Joe, don't ever think you're jumping in the questions. Steer the show, my friend.
Oh no, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to elaborate on any of the questions. We have what are some ways to reset after rejection?
Whew, you know, this is a tough one. I mean, this comes up, like Joe, you mentioned dating all the time, right? And I think, and I work with a lot of clients that are in the dating world and they feel the rejection and then it feels like, oh God, I don't want to get back out there again. Right. And that's similar to applying for jobs, right? Or not landing, you know, the deal that you thought you were going to land or whatever it might be, right? I think we have to be aware that in life, we tend to have more no's than we do yeses, right? Like, so if we focus on all of the no's, we are going to get really caught up in how bad that feels and how negative it is. But we have to get through all the no's to get to the yeses, right? Like the yeses usually are smaller and less frequent. And so we have to build tolerance, unfortunately, to those difficult experiences where it's not the right fit for whatever reason. And, you know, I'm a spiritual person, so I like to trust in the experiences that do work out and the experiences that don't work out, right? That the experiences that aren't meant for us are not going to work out. That to me is like a truth of the universe, you know, and the experiences that are going to work out will, because they're meant for us. Right. When I remind myself about that and I'm in trust with all of that, it doesn't feel so personal. It feels much more like, yeah, this is the way life works. We get things that we're supposed to and we don't get the things we're not supposed to. And all of that is up to a power higher than ourselves.
That's definitely a great approach to it. Definitely, because as you're saying this, I picture my stress level on how I let things bother me. You know, again, the older you get, I think you realize that I actually listened to a really good talk with, what's his name? Mr. Wonderful from Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah.
Kevin O'Leary, yeah, from Shark Tank. And he's in his 60s now. And I listened to, he was on a podcast or during an interview, and he said it really was impactful for me because it really like hit home. He has about like 60, 70 companies that he's an owner, part owner of. He goes, when I was younger, I didn't realize how important it was just to wait, right? Like he goes, you start out with something bad that happens in your day and you let it just consume you and you ruin your day. He goes, now the older I've gotten, he goes, I'll get a call from one of my companies early in the morning that it's a complete shit show. You know, that like something catastrophically happened. And he goes, now, normally I would freak out and let it ruin my day. He goes, but you realize that good things, you keep doing the right thing in life, that good thing is going to come. He goes, and then by the end of the day, I find out that one of my companies sold for like 10 times the value that we thought it would sell for. You know, and he's like, and all of a sudden now it's a great day. He goes, but I don't let it consume me like I used to with that first piece of negativity or bad news, because I know that good is coming.
Right.
And I just thought that was something that was, you know, very interesting and powerful, just to not get negative and realize that just the way life works, you keep doing the right thing. Good things are around the corner.
Right. Absolutely. I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
We have, I got fired at my last job. How do I deal with imposter syndrome when I start my next one?
Well,
that's a good one.
I think most people have imposter syndrome. I'll just tell you that. It's kind of I think it's a world of fake it till you make it in many ways.
Is that bad though?
Well, I think it's realistic that sometimes we really struggle with feeling good about, like, you know, our strengths. And I think that's okay as long as we're working on it, right? Like, you know, many of the therapists that I work with, they're beginner therapists. And so they have, you know, the imposter syndrome of like, who am I to be doing this, right? Despite the fact that they've gone through the education and, you know, they've done their hours of learning and, you know, all the stuff. And I think that that's kind of an appropriate place to be at in some ways when we are new or we've had a difficult experience. But the idea is like, we have to allow ourselves to know that the reality is we don't know everything. Even when we're an expert in something, there's still things that we have to learn all the time, right? And I think we fail to understand that sometimes as a society. I think, we tend to have these naive ideas that like we become an expert and then we know everything on whatever the topic is. And it's like, no, we become an expert and we still learn and grow all the time, right? So I think it's about, again, shifting that mindset around there's a perfectionism hiding in that, right? Like I need to do this perfectly. I need to be amazing. I need to be the best, versus like I'm a person who's growing and learning. And so I might not be the best at what I'm doing yet, and that's okay. But I can be good enough for where I'm at right now and continue to grow, right?
Right. No, I absolutely agree.
We have. Do you have any quick exercises or daily practices to help get prepped for the day?
Sure. I mean, there's so many. It totally depends on like your practice, what you like to do. I mean, I have a lot of clients who love to meditate in the morning, which I always think is a wonderful way to start the day. I have people who purposely don't look at their phones in the morning because that feels like a negative way to start the day. Like I think you have to kind of attune to what feels right for you, right? Like if a workout is what helps you feel alive and excited in the morning, great, then you do your thing. If it's a spiritual practice, some people like to pray. Some people like to, pick cards. I have cards that are one of the practices that I do. All of that stuff to me, it's like, again, it's about knowing yourself. So what is the right practice for you? Do you like to journal? Do you like to, have a cup of coffee? All of those are totally perfectly fine ways to start your day if it's right for you.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with the working out in the morning, because that's, for me, I'll go on a run every morning. And while I'm on my run, even though I'm not sitting there in Zen meditation as I'm running, I'm thinking about what I have to do. And it kind of relaxes me, because I feel like I'm still getting that workout done where I feel great when I'm done, but I'm organizing a lot of my thoughts for the day, where I kind of feel like I'm killing two birds with one stone, as opposed to sitting down at the desk and say, okay, what do I have to do today? But then the way I am, I'd say, yeah, but I still got to run. I still got to get that run in. So it's a way where I could do both. And then when I'm done with that run, I feel so much more prepared and ahead of everything, because I know where I'm going now. Even though I have my days prepared ahead of time, I still am mentally preparing what I have to do.
Right.
So 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, here's a good one that hits home for me. I struggle really badly with ADHD. What are some tips to stay focused throughout the day?
Well, I think that if you struggle with ADHD, I hope that you've had some sort of therapeutic intervention, because you need to, for me, it's really important that, obviously this is on a spectrum. So some people have minor struggles, some people have much bigger struggles, but some people need executive functioning coaches, right? Like some people need medication. I think we need to be mindful that if we're something that we're really struggling with, not to feel like we need to do it all by ourselves, and to instead allow in some levels of support that help us feel much better about our ability to manage it, right? Because when you have something like ADHD, it's not as simple as like, okay, today I'm going to focus, right? Or like, it's like you can't just like will yourself around some of these things. You need to know that different types of support are really necessary. Some people need to have things like really written out for themselves. Some people need to be able to stop and take breaks. Everybody has like their own way of doing it, but you may need someone like an executive functioning coach or a therapist to help you figure out what those ways are for you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have no experience with ADHD, so I can't chime in, but that all sounded great to me. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Mental health is no joke. Like, it's not like we need to overinflate it, but we have to take it seriously of how it's impacting us, right?
Well, I think a lot of people that don't deal in that space a lot, you'll say, oh, that guy's annoying. He's hyper.
Mm-hmm.
He's too much for me. I mean, I know as a kid, that's how I was with kids that I knew later on. You don't know. You're a little kid.
Right.
You're like, oh, that guy's very hyper and, high strung or whatever. That kid's always hyper in class. And you have no clue, how impactful and how serious that is, especially as you get older. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I mean, but it is serious.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a spectrum, right? So if you have minor, difficulties paying attention or things like that, you probably have figured out some, coping mechanisms to help you like stay on track. But when it gets more significant, like we have to be willing to let others give us some feedback on that. Like sometimes we really do need medication. We don't realize it. I mean, I've had people who start taking medication for ADHD who like feel like their whole life has changed because they can finally like complete tasks that they could never do before, right? And other people, it just requires that they just need like a lot of support around it. And it's not medication that, is necessary. But again, that's where like getting some sort of assistance in to help you, to me is priceless.
Yeah, 100%.
We have, here we go. My last boss really tore me down. How do I rebuild my confidence?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, if you've been in like a toxic relationship with a boss, I would, this sounds similar to my last answer, but it's true. You probably could benefit from doing some therapeutic work around it because those, those scars, those wounds from a difficult relationship of that kind, especially when it's an authority figure who's, tearing us down in some way, usually we need some sort of like real processing on it. And that's where therapy comes into play, where you can, move through the pain that it's brought up for you, the, difficulty, confusion around how you see yourself and all of that stuff. I would suggest getting support around it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, only because there was one boss that to this day, I still remember a lot of the mental torture this individual put me through. And I never had a point where I wanted to quit because of a boss. Like there's times you disagree. I can't stand what he's doing, or he's being, this or that. And you get pissed for a week or two. But most of them I've always respected. This one was true, like gaslighting. Mm-hmm. And it messed me up because you start saying, well, my numbers are showing something very positive, but I'm getting negative feedback every time I'm with this person. And my only advice would help me is realizing it is just one person. Like you said before, one person tells you have a tail, not a big deal. Two people tell you, okay, now you should look around and see if you have a tail. Mm-hmm. If it's one person, try to take it as that. Mm-hmm. And especially if you've had bosses in the past, usually if you had positive outcomes with this, don't let this person ruin you, because I know I let this stay with me for a while and I felt like I was just not that good of a rep at the time because of this person. And until I started to get positive feedback from the new boss, then I started to feel good again. But I let months go by that I was really in like this mental torment. It's just not worth it. Not for one person, because there's a lot of idiots out there in plain English. I mean, you can't let them ruin you.
Absolutely.
From a manager's perspective, what are some subtle signs that someone's past is holding them back?
I think that, I mentioned before, when someone's new to a job, it's natural, of course, that there's going to be like a transition period. And, I often say when therapists are coming on that are interviewing, they'll ask me like, what makes a successful therapist, And there's a couple of things to that, but one of which is relatable, I think, to the medical sales field is having like just enough confidence. Like if you don't have enough confidence, it's going to be seen and it's going to impact the way that people trust you in what you're sharing, you know, what you're trying to sell to them, what in the therapy space, it would be like your relationship with them, right? There's this happy medium where you're open to growing, right? You're not like overconfident, but you're not so lacking confidence that people don't feel good about what, you know, you're sharing with them, right? And so back to the kind of like, you know, fake it till you make it, like you have to bring in some of that, whether it's just confidence about like who you are as a person, or perhaps like the way that you can connect with people, or what you have to find something that you feel good about yourself with. Because if not, it's really telling. And then I think that holds you back so much when you're not feeling good enough about yourself, right? And these are things that can be worked on, but you got to bring something to the table in that way.
Yeah. I think for me, all my moments of feeling were more feeling, not feeling confident was because of not being prepared in a lot of the situations. I know it's a little different from, you know, being torn down by a previous boss, but what helped me overcome those moments was whenever I felt like that during a presentation and I'm like, damn, after I know I didn't feel sharp. I wasn't ready for all these questions. And when I really prepared and went in there, I had that confidence that I know I felt like it exuded from my body, that people knew that it was just because I put the time in and I prepared as much as possible. You know, you're never going to be perfect, but that always helped me get over that insecurity. You know, whatever would happen, I would make sure address all the things that went wrong, but really prepare the next time so you're ready for anything.
Absolutely. That's so important.
Yeah.
I know I should let go of the past, but how do I stop replaying old mistakes in my head? I really struggle with it.
Well, if you're constantly beating yourself up about old mistakes, you probably have some perfectionism issues, right? Because everybody makes mistakes. We all make mistakes in life. Like that is the way that we grow and learn. If you're not making mistakes, you're not human, you know? So that to me is there's some underlying belief that person probably is carrying that is connected with unrealistic expectations about themselves, right? Rather than saying like, yeah, of course I made mistakes. Like, you know, I'm like a growing person. Like I was young, or, you know, I'm still learning about this or whatever it may be. And that goes on forever. That's not just when you're in your 20s. That's like, you know, this is lifelong stuff that we're talking about, right? So if you're not making mistakes, I think something is wrong. I think the only problem is if you're not learning from the mistakes. That's the only time I would be concerned, not if you're actually just making the mistakes. Hopefully, like you get something from them and then you're able to do it differently. Maybe not the next time, but maybe a couple times after that. But I would just tell that person to be really mindful about their expectations of themselves. It sounds like there's a lack of compassion and understanding of their own humanity, which is really, you know, is a really tough place for us to put ourselves in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got one more for you. I had a potential client ghost me in really late in the sales process, and it was really frustrating. Do you have any suggestions on how to deal with something like that?
Well, I think similar to what Joe said before, it's about not personalizing things. Like we don't know why someone ghosts us. That happens all the time. I mean, it happens in therapy too. Someone just stops showing up, stops responding to emails. It's like, you know, be mindful about assuming that everything is about us rather than that it's some reflection of them. And again, like if it's happening repeatedly, yeah, we want to look at that. Like, why might that be happening? But I would be mindful about taking any one experience too seriously. And instead knowing that like things happen all the time. Maybe the person, got scared or, whatever. And maybe they're a poor communicator. So instead of addressing the issue, they decided to just try to avoid it. Right. That happens all the time.
Yeah. And for any sales reps out there, I mean, that's the name of the game in medical sales. I mean, if we had got a response from every doctor we ever called on, I mean, it would be an easy job. You're going to get ghosted all the time. It's not letting it affect you. You move on and keep contacting the people that want to work with you, the people that want to give you the business and give you the time, because there's plenty of them out there. Just don't keep chasing after someone to say, my goal is that I want to get them to respond. At the end of the day, you could be passing up so much other business out there with people that are not going to ghost you and want to work with you. So, but there was no other questions, right, James?
Nope, we got nothing else.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, Alana, I want to thank you again. This was an absolute pleasure. If, feel free to please let anyone know, because a lot of times what happens is people will contact me after the show and say, I wanted to ask this question, or how do I reach out to your guest? So if you can please share some of the information about your practice, your background, whatever you'd like to share, just so if anyone wants to contact you, they can.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at The Codependent Perfectionist. That's also my website, which is thecodependentperfectionist.com. And I co-own a group therapy practice in Manhattan called Intuitive Healing Psychotherapy Practice, where we work on everything that we talked about today and so much more. So happy to have you guys reach out for any support that you're looking for.
Awesome. And guys, again, if any of you want to get a copy of this, want to see the recording, Unfiltered Medical Sales Coaching on Facebook, on YouTube, and also please, if you're looking to break into the medical sales industry, join the RepPath Academy. You can click on the link below and set up a call with me to learn more about that. We're very excited about that. And it's an outstanding resource for anyone looking to break in. For all of you lobby members, please enter the promo code Licata, Licata, when you reach out to me so you can get additional discounts. And again, Alana, thank you so much. This is a pleasure. And next week, guys, again, we're going to have a show every Monday and Wednesday at 3 p.m. So be sure to join us then. Thank you all and have a great week. Thank you.